I swear, half of this video is basically just gonna be you guys finding out how sheltered I am. Hey guys, I have just gotten back from finishing my first year of college as a musical theater major. We are back in the classic setup, and this has been an interesting year for my channel. I feel like I've managed to do a pretty decent job of still putting out content even in spite of how busy I've been, but very few of the videos I've put out this year have been things on my long-term bucket list. I've just had basically like a ton of in-the-moment ideas that I've ended up making that have just added up to like 20-something videos throughout this past year. Like, the Jane Doe stairwell cover was very much something I just did on a whim. I had no idea that was going to be as successful as it was, and it actually ended up getting me the boost I needed to get to 2K subscribers in less than like 6 months after I've gotten to 1K, which was so crazy. I still can't thank you guys enough for that. Most of my long-form videos in the past have very much been things I've planned out for a while, years even. I still have several of those on the table that I'm planning on doing eventually, but this year I've just had a lot of ideas where I've been like, okay, let's do that, because of like various things that have happened in my life, like the Phantom of the Opera video with the show closing and my choir teacher dying on the same day. I knew I just had to make something with that. Then over the past semester, I kind of just turned into a Mario movie channel. I've spent so much of my free time this past semester on my personal songwriting projects, and then when I wasn't doing that, I was basically just hyperfixating on the Mario movie 24/7 and having so many ideas related to that, especially after the movie actually came out. I think I've gotten most of it out of my system at this point with my latest AMV. I can't promise I won't make any more, but I assure you we will be going back to regularly scheduled programming soon enough. I promise you I am still 100% the biggest Full Metal Alchemist fan on the planet. I still have so many ideas related to that I want to make. I still want to make more singing videos, lots of stuff. I've also been doing lots of collaboration type things in the past year. I got to be on a podcast with the one and only Phineas, who has now become a terrific friend of mine. I've also been extremely lucky to develop a bit of a working relationship with Shafrillis Productions, which is still absolutely insane. Even almost a year after we came into contact, he's my favorite YouTuber of all time and such an inspiration for so much of my stuff. He's been kind enough to promote a couple of my videos for me. I got to cameo in his anime video last year, and he's hired me to edit one of his upcoming projects, which is super exciting. And most recently, I've gotten my first ever voice acting sort of job in Dane Spurl's Super Mario comic dubs. I get to voice Princess Peach, Pauline, and potentially even more characters in the future, who knows? So with all of that said, today I wanted to do something a little different to sort of get myself back in the swing of making videos. I've had lots of pretty neat new experiences this year, both in my artistic / academic and personal life, and I thought it would be really fun to share some of them with you. So let's get into it. No more stalling. Why are my intros always so long? We're gonna kick things off with a silly one. Before going to college, I had never drank coffee. I've never really been much of a caffeine person, which might come across as a little surprising given everything about me. Like, I hardly ever drink any soda either, except for root beer. My dad drinks a lot of coffee, but my mom doesn't really like it. So while it's not that I wasn't allowed to drink it, it was just never really something I was encouraged towards or even like interested in. But yeah, this year I decided to try it, and I actually love it. Definitely drink it less than your average college student. Like, it's usually only once or twice a week. Like, it's not something I need to get through the day. But I like it. It's a tasty treat. I love trying all the different flavors. I definitely need something in it. I need like some cream and sugar at least. I can't just drink it black. I definitely prefer mine iced. It tends to offset the bitterness, plus you don't have to wait to drink it. I really don't know what my favorite flavor is. I love a good caramel latte, and I also love peppermint mocha and pumpkin spice when they're in season. And the coffee shop I go to every Friday by my university has such good chai. It tastes like Christmas. I promise this whole video won't just be me sounding like a basic white girl. The second thing that I'd never done before going to college was live with a roommate. Now, I realize that most people generally don't live with another unrelated teenager until they go to college, so that's pretty standard, but I'm also an only child, so like sharing a space with literally anybody other than my parents was completely new to me. And while there was definitely a bit of a learning curve, I'm proud to say that at the end of the year, I have a grand total of 0 roommate horror stories. My roommate was awesome, super smart, super funny. She was a design and production major, so we were both like artsy theater kids who like got that side of each other, but also there wasn't any of the like awkwardness that could have come from us both being MTs. We didn't really hang out a lot outside of the room due to just generally being in different circles, but we were always there to listen whenever the other person needed to vent about their day, and we'd had lots of like great deep late night combos. It was really interesting to see the differences in our personalities and ways of doing things based on like her being an oldest sibling and me being an only child. Yeah, overall she was a fantastic person to live with. We got along super well. We were both massive nerds. Nobody lied, nobody stole anything, nobody brought home a guy without their roommate's permission, which was never gonna happen anyway because she's ace and I have no riz. So yeah, overall a great first roommate experience. I'm glad I get to be in a single next year though, because that means I get to sing in the shower. This one is so embarrassing. Picked my own outfits. I swear half of this video is basically just gonna be you guys finding out how sheltered I am. Now don't jump to conclusions. This is not me being like, oh my mommy picked out my clothes. It's not like that. I had input and they were clothes I already liked, but I went to middle school and high school 25 minutes away from my actual house, so between getting home late from rehearsals and having to get up super early in the morning, I wouldn't always have time to pick out my outfit for the next morning. So a lot of times my mom would just end up picking them for me, not because I'm a baby, but just because she's the best. I love you, Mom. Obviously this arrangement doesn't work when you're literally 11 hours away from home, but luckily picking out outfits is kind of fun. I definitely wouldn't say my style has changed a lot. Like, I think the stuff I wore in high school pretty accurately reflects how I dress now, but I definitely got to be a bit bolder and more unconventional with some of my combos and layering choices, and I created some outfits I'm pretty proud of. On the more musical side of things, college was my first time seeing or auditioning for an opera. My university's opera and musical theater programs are really heavily integrated, so the musical theater majors are required to audition for all of the operas in addition to all of the musicals. I'd sung maybe 5 or 6 total classical songs before going to college, and there was basically nowhere around my town where I could actually see a performance of an opera. So I basically just got plunged this year head first into this whole world of music that I had basically no prior experience in, and honestly, I loved it. My school did 3 operas this year. We did Hansel and Gretel, Orpheus in the Underworld, and The Magic Flute, and all of them were so fantastic. All of the vocals were gorgeous, of course, not to flex, but there were lots of people from my studio in Magic Flute. And since the opera and musical theater programs are so integrated, there was also so much excellent acting and humor and creative direction choices. The design work was amazing. Magic Flute was definitely my favorite. Such a magical and smartly directed production of this classic opera, plus one of my best friends played Pamina, so I'm a little biased in that regard. In general, I was just exposed to so much new information about vocal technique this year that I hadn't been previously. My voice teacher in particular is really big on using classical technique as the foundation for all different styles of singing, so this year I learned so much about engaging my core and opening my throat up and just in general learning to sing more efficiently and with more color. I had to sing German art songs and take an English diction class. I also entered in the musical theater branch of a competition for the National Association of Teachers of Singing, or NATS, and ended up getting 5th place in my region. In general, I'm so glad that my school places such a heavy emphasis on music literacy and knowing how your instrument works and how music in general works beyond just the performance aspect of it. I think it's going to end up helping me so much, not only as a vocalist, but as a composer. Which brings me to several new adventures in the songwriting department. I've probably put more work into my songwriting than any other creative thing this year, particularly in regards to a certain musical adaptation of a certain anime I've made a concerning amount of videos about in the past. For starters, I've transcribed sheet music for almost all of my fully completed songs, which is something I assumed I'd never have the musical know-how to be able to do on my own, let alone creating fully fledged orchestrations for most of them too. I was originally going to get someone else to do the orchestrations, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized, you know what? There's really no way I can expect someone else to make this sound the way I want it to sound for me. So yeah, I adopted my usual fine, I'll do it myself mindset, got really freaking good at using MuseScore, and churned out 20 odd orchestrations in less than 4 months, during which time I can fully assure you I had next to no social life. Orchestrating is a ton of work, as you might imagine, but it's beyond satisfying when you can hit play on a piece and it sounds exactly how you always heard it in your head. I don't know when I'm going to be able to show you guys more of my original music. I think I'm going to try to figure out like getting some of my stuff copyrighted before I post anything else on YouTube, but I'm definitely really want to do it sometime in the future. I want you guys to see what I've been working on because I'm so proud of it. I can, however, show you guys a little bit of what Even Into Hell sounds like fully orchestrated. blast refining my pieces on my own this year, I've also taken my first steps to actually get them performed and out in the world, which has been so crazy. I've gotten to perform Shadows in 3 different settings this year, including the almost fully arranged version. So how can you ever have something as selfish as peace? You tried for God, yet you failed to hope for peace. Will I ever reach my destination and live I had to nail down the instrumentalists and the rehearsal times and all of this crazy organizational stuff that really does not come naturally to me, but you bet I am excited to do it again next year. And I've also gotten to workshop some songs I've written for other Full Metal Alchemist characters such as Roy, Winry, and Envy with some of the other fantastic musical theater majors at my school. Composing has actually led me to make so many awesome friendships that I wouldn't have made otherwise. I ended up joining the Student Composers Club at my school and meeting so many awesome people. Most of the friends I've made my first year have actually ended up being either composition or instrumental performance majors because we're all just such massive nerds. Not to mention I've ended up going to a ton of their performances like jazz band concerts and violin recitals, which has exposed me to even more music that I'd never heard previously. Best of all, I started taking private composition lessons with one of the most knowledgeable and compassionate professors I ever could have asked for, who is literally one of my favorite human beings on the planet. Next we have another embarrassing one. Gone to restaurants by myself. Hashtag sheltered girl core, am I right, ladies? I didn't grow up eating out a whole lot, and I also have embarrassingly little driving experience, so I was always accompanied by either my parents or some other adult. So yeah, this year was really my first time ever that I could just go in a restaurant by myself when I wanted something and just be like, hi, table for 1, please. But I am pleased to say that now I am a certified pro at ordering my own food, and my mom actually says I'm better than she is, which is shocking because she's way less socially awkward than I am. Now, I still don't have a car, so I can really only go to places within walking distance of my campus, but luckily the Asian district is right next to school, so I've had lots of Thai and boba tea this year. And if I wanted something else, I also used DoorDash for the first time ever. DoorDash definitely has a bit of a learning curve, and I do in fact have a couple of horror stories. So I lived in the freshman honors dorm this year, which is, fun fact, the most nondescript building on campus, isn't very well labeled, and is nearly impossible to see from the road, which makes ordering delivery a living nightmare for all parties involved. Like, it's basically impossible to find this thing by name alone, and my campus is really small, so I'm pretty sure that like everything has the same mailing address. So the first time I got DoorDash, they sent it to the other dorm, which is impossible for me to get into unless someone lets me. All I wanted was a nice melty fillet of fish from McDonald's, and by the time I got it, it wasn't nice and melty anymore. The worst one by far though was when I decided to order some ramen. It was pretty late and also very cold, and I decided based on the projected arrival time that I could take a shower. So I get out of the shower and I see a text saying that if they can't find me in 5 minutes, they're gonna leave the ramen for me to find, which, okay, fine. I'm freaking running outside in what would have been 5 minutes after the text was sent. No ramen, no car. So at this point, I'm like checking every single reasonable place where they could have left the ramen. I go to the other dorm in case they pulled a McDonald's. And then I'm like calling and texting this number over and over like someone's annoying stalker ex. Like, hi, can I have my ramen? Please. Sorry I took a shower and wasted your time. I am very hungry and very cold. Now can I please have my food? I spent like $20. I ended up having to do a second order, and at this point I was so done. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm never ordering ramen again. There's no way this was worth it. And then I finally got it and I took a bite and I was like, you know what? This almost was worth it. This is so freaking good. At least Papa John's has never done me dirty though, because let me tell you, there is no college kid comfort food better than impulse ordered pizza at 10:30 p.m. when you're getting home super late from a show and you're starving because the calf food sucked that night. I also found this little Italian place that has the best baked chicken Alfredo, which I ordered once when I was depressed because a guy wouldn't go out with me, and it was so good I almost cried. I may have had zero luck in the boy department this year, but I did get to have my first stage kiss. It wasn't for a show, it was for my acting final. My partner and I did the final scene from my favorite play, Lost Girl by Kimberly Bellflower. It was honestly really scary at first. I haven't dated or kissed anyone since I was 14, and let's be real, who really knows how to kiss when you're 14? Kissing has always been kind of a weird thing for me because, like, when I just think about it, I'm like, yes, I want to be kissed. Kiss me now. But then when the opportunity actually arises, it's suddenly very daunting and ew, mouth's wet. I don't really go to parties and I don't drink alcohol, so I wouldn't really ever be in any settings where like my inhibitions would be lowered enough where I could get more experience in areas like that in a casual setting. Like, I've still never made out with anybody. And I think my acting teacher assumed I had more experience than I actually did, and so at first she was sort of just like, yeah, just go do it. And so my partner started to go in, and I actually kind of panicked a little bit and kind of teared up. Told you, this is the video where you guys get to see how sheltered I am. It all ended up being fine though. We found a way to work through it that didn't feel scary to me, and it ended up being something really gentle and intimate and lovely, and we got lots of nice comments about it, so yay. This was my first year that I had Sondheim in my audition book. I've had a bit of a weird, rocky, love-hate relationship with Stephen Sondheim as a composer. I've always had a tremendous amount of respect for his work, but until this year, it's been really kind of difficult for me to like emotionally engage and truly love one of his shows. And I realize that it's because almost everything he writes is so perfect. Like, it almost feels inhuman how perfect some of his music is. And for me, it's just like, well, like, as a composer myself, sometimes it's like, well, why would anyone listen to anything I've written when this exists? Sondheim is often, understandably, put on such a pedestal of genius and artistic excellence throughout the theater community, and especially at my school. And I've often struggled with feeling like I'm not smart enough or a sophisticated enough actress to really be able to do one of his pieces justice. And in fact, literally the only Sondheim song I have ever even attempted singing before college was Send in the Clowns, which I covered on my channel. This year we did Sunday in the Park with George, and I auditioned with I Remember from Evening Primrose. I picked the song mainly because our student-run theater organization was doing callbacks for Ride the Cyclone based on Sunday in the Park with George auditions, and I felt like that song was a really good fit for Jane Doe. A callback which I did end up getting, although I didn't end up booking the part because I literally go to soprano the school. Later in the year, we had to do early callbacks for the two leads in next year's production of Sweeney Todd, and much to my surprise, I ended up on the list for Mrs. Lovett. For months, I'd written myself off as not funny or clever enough to ever even be considered for Mrs. Lovett, and here I was, one of only 3 freshmen on the list. Turns out, I can do a pretty smashing Worst Pies in London, and though I didn't end up getting the part, I was really proud of my audition. I've definitely learned not to limit myself in terms of what roles I think I'm capable of playing. I've always considered my type to be angsty, reserved, park and bark belters like Fantine or Elsa, and I assumed that since the competition at my school is so tight, that's all I'd ever get cast as. And hey, I'm not complaining. Les Mis is literally my favorite musical. But somebody at this school thinks I'm funny, apparently, because I've been getting called back for a lot of comedic stuff, like You're a Good Man, Charlie Brown, and Orpheus in the Underworld. Speaking of not limiting myself, this school year I have listened to a grand total of 42 new albums and 39 new musicals. And when I say new, I mean new for me. Like, this was literally my first time listening to My Fair Lady. I alternate between listening to a new musical and a new album, and a lot of times with albums, I'll like shuffle my giant playlist of favorite songs and listen to the full album of whatever comes up. And then other times I'll just pick like an acclaimed one that's been on my list or one by an artist I've been wanting to get more into. I listened to so many amazing albums this year, but I'd have to say my favorite was To Pimp a Butterfly. I am one of the least knowledgeable people about rap and hip hop you will ever meet, but Kendrick Lamar just has such an incredible palette of musical and cultural references and dense, raw stream of consciousness lyricism. Such a complete, brilliantly realized work of art, and one of those rare albums that just like left me in stunned silence when I finished it. Some of my other favorite listens this year were Lemonade by Beyonce, Use Your Illusion by Guns N' Roses, Lungs by Florence and the Machine, Tidal by Fiona Apple, Miseducation of Lauryn Hill, Go Farther in Lightness by Gang of Utes, Bury Me at Makeout Creek by Mitski, and Wasteland Baby by Hozier. And my favorite musical discovery this year was easily Ride the Cyclone, no contest. Also, please go listen to Octet. It's an a cappella chamber choir musical about addiction to technology, and it's absolutely insane. Dave Malloy might be my favorite composer of all time. I took my first ever tap class this year. I wouldn't call myself a bad dancer, but it's definitely the thing that's come the least naturally to me as a performer. I'm a triple threat if you count composing, Anybody? My school has one of the best dance programs in the country, which is part of the reason I was so shocked to get in. And let me tell you, the School of Dance does not mess around. I was fighting for my life in this class. There were 6 people in there, and I was the only one of them who'd never taken this class or another tap class before. It's also really easy to get sensory overload in tap class because the lights are super bright and you have like the loud metal noises bouncing off the walls, and a lot of times I would just like stand there and dissociate. I worked super hard though. I was really lucky to have one of my best friends be an amazing tap dancer who helped me get through my midterm. And at midterms, I actually ended up being the only person who got through the entire routine without stopping. I got through the finals without any outside help, and I actually ended up getting an A- in what was going to be my most difficult class from the get-go. I ended up only taking one gen ed this year, which was a philosophy class. The topic of the class was peace and nonviolence, and our assignments consisted of reading and writing essays about 5 books by different pacifist activists throughout history. I think this class did a lot to help me round out my worldviews. It challenged me to think more about larger systemic issues and my own morals and the things I take for granted. My favorite book we read this year was definitely MLK Jr.'s Where Do We Go From Here? The nuance and empathy displayed in his writing is just so remarkable. I felt that it reflected so much of my own values while also challenging me in a lot of ways, and it provides a much deeper understanding of Dr. King's views compared to the sort of sanitized version we're often shown today. My final paper for this class was also the longest thing I've ever written about something I'm not hyper-fixated on, and I'm extremely proud of that. One of the best things I did this year was actually start attending university worship services on Mondays. I've always had a very rocky relationship with religion. I've never gone to church full-time, but I went to a Christian elementary school, which was not the greatest experience for me, considering I was bullied all 6 years I was there and the teachers never did anything about it. I had this huge crisis of faith in middle school where I felt extremely disconnected from God and was constantly afraid that I and everyone I loved was going to hell. I had begun to see God as this unforgiving dictator, as this cosmic embodiment of do it because I said so or burn alive for all eternity. The church at my university, however, is full of some of the kindest, most welcoming and accepting people I have ever met, especially the pastor who gives the world's best hugs and whose sermons have made me cry on multiple occasions because of how much they've been exactly what I needed to hear. They've really helped me to start rebuilding my relationship with God and unlearning all of the misinformation that I've been told about him over the years. I'm still not quite in a secure place in terms of my beliefs about heaven and hell, but one thing I do know is that Jesus really did love everyone, and he wanted his word to be used to protect the marginalized rather than oppress them further. Also, the communion is so good for no reason. Bread dipped in grape juice has no right to be that tasty. I also went to therapy for the first time this year. Where I'm from, therapy is still fairly stigmatized and not widely available, but my school offers it for free, so I decided why not? I went every other Tuesday, and I'm really glad I did. Going to therapy does not mean admitting you're broken. It does not mean admitting you're mentally ill, which, to be fair, I think everyone's a little mentally ill. As my roommate once told me, sometimes your heart needs a checkup just like your body does. I really think just about anyone can benefit from spending an hour with someone who is literally paid to listen to them. It helped that I happened to get a therapist who also loved Full Metal Alchemist, so that was pretty epic. I think one of my favorite things in college was just getting to do spontaneous stuff with friends. Like I said before, I grew up in a different city from pretty much all of my friends, which was often rather isolating for me. Like, I could never just randomly go with a friend to be like, hey, you want to do this thing or that thing? Like, whenever I wanted to hang out with somebody, it always had to be planned like days in advance. I feel like that's one of the biggest things I missed out on in my teen years. Like, last summer, I spent the night over at my friend's house and we went to get Sonic milkshakes at like 9:30 p.m. and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so random. We're such grown-ups. Then I realized that it was completely normal for most teenagers to get to do that. And it was kind of sad. I wish that I had a picture of how much my face lit up whenever I'd get back to my dorm after a student composers concert and get a text saying that everybody was going to Brahms or getting pizza and asking if I wanted to come. Or of the time my friend and I got back from seeing Hadestown. Like, literally, we're right in front of my dorm, and then she looks at me and says, do you want to get dessert? Getting to do random fun things like that with friends and spending 2 hours late at night camped out in the car having deep conversations. It's the kind of stuff that I never got to do in high school, and I'm so happy I get to do it now. I hope you guys liked hearing about a bunch of my random experiences my first year of college. I hope it made you laugh or cry or think or something. I hope you liked getting to know me better, and I'm really excited to keep making videos for you guys this summer. Toodles!